Hey everybody, Jason Lieser and Joe Schad here in Davie at the Dolphins facility. Thanks for staying up with us. It's pretty late. It's almost midnight, I think. Third round of the draft just wrapped up. And Joe is so disappointed because they didn't take an offensive lineman. Joe thought that would have just been so fun tonight if they had taken Forrest Lamp or some other offensive lineman in the second round. Instead, they get Raekwon McMillan, the linebacker from Ohio State. They get the cornerback Cordray Tankersley from Clemson. Tell everyone how upset you are.
Well, I just felt like it was a bigger priority for the Miami Dolphins to add somebody who could play guard or center. If not the second round, the third round. There were three guys, a guy from Pittsburgh, a guy from Texas A&M, and a guy from Utah. They obviously felt that Cordray Tankersley was better than those guys. And so General Manager Chris Grier said that the Dolphins were going to stick to their draft board. And who knows, maybe someday Tankersley will replace Byron Maxwell, who, ironically, he said, is a guy he looks up to.
Both Clemson guys.
Yeah, both Clemson guys, both very athletic, both playmakers. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. Chris Grier mentioned that perhaps Xavier Howard could end up playing on the inside. So if you have
a slot cover guy?
Yeah, so if you have Maxwell and Tankersley on the outside, Xavier Howard in the middle. The reason I'm okay with this, and I want to get your take on this, the Dolphins, like a lot of organizations, place a premium on the cornerback position and the pass rusher position, because when those guys hit free agency, they're so expensive.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? The idea that there's a premium on pass rushers and corners.
Well, yeah, I'm get to that in 1 second, but guys, go ahead and hit us with your thoughts on the second round pick and third round pick and what you think they've done so far. We'd love to get your thoughts on that. As far as the cornerback question you asked, Joe, I saw it coming, and you did too, that they would want a cornerback at some point in this draft, because along the lines of what you're talking about, Adam Gase told us just a few weeks ago, you can never have enough of those guys, and you burn through them so quickly. And when you talk about Byron Maxwell and Xavier Howard as their main two guys, they obviously are, but Xavier Howard missed, 7 games last year with an injury? I mean, you don't know necessarily what you'll get from him going forward. And Byron Maxwell had a really just disastrous start to the season before he turned around, but he's, 28, 29, I believe? So it definitely made sense for them in the short term and in the long run. As far as their cornerback depth, I don't know that they have a guy they love besides Maxwell and Howard.
I think they love Howard more than Maxwell.
But who's the third? I mean, that's where it makes sense to me that they would want Tankersley that high.
If you ask Tony Lippett, he would say, "What? I'm not a star anymore. What about me?" But he's still a developmental project. One word that jumps out to me, which is something that, if I remember, I would like to write about tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Is durability. Mm-hmm. The guys that the Dolphins added are durable players, and the Dolphins had players at those positions who weren't very durable last year. So they add Raekwon McMillan. Greg Schiano, who used to be the Rutgers head coach, and also a former colleague of mine at ESPN, is now the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. He texted me a few things about Raekwon McMillan, the linebacker, and one of the words he used was durable. And I thought about how Kiko Alonso has been hurt. And who else am I missing?
Jelani Jenkins, but he's gone.
Jenkins
but that was a major
hurt.
Durability issue for them at linebacker last year.
And
you don't know the durability of Lawrence Timmons, who's in his 11th season, I believe.
Right. He's played a lot of games, and that's good and bad. Of course, Cole Meese's hurt. Byron Maxwell wasn't able to finish the season on the field last year.
Yeah.
So and as you mentioned, Xavier Howard has already had 2 surgeries, and he hasn't even played. He's only played 1 year in the NFL. So
I'd like to talk a little bit about the McMillan pick itself, how they came to that conclusion, and then get your thoughts on maybe how he fits. Mm-hmm. What are we going to see from him in 2017? As far as the pick itself, a little bit of a gamble, because this is a guy who is a big run-stopping type linebacker. First knock you're going to find on him in any draft scouting report, Joe, is that he's not great in coverage. They have a coverage guy, though, a linebacker that can cover in Kiko Alonso. They were the worst they've ever been in franchise history against the run last year.
31st in the NFL.
Mel Kiper criticized this as a pick that would have made a lot of sense back in 1985. But the Dolphins, if you looked at them last year, you said this a lot, they could use one of those 1985 type middle linebackers. So I think that McMillan's a good pick for them on that front. And then the other area where maybe seen as a little bit of a gamble is not a lot of people saw Raekwon McMillan going in the second round. Chris Greer doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the mock drafts and the projections and things like that.
Some people thought Tankersley was a little bit of a reach, that was a little bit early.
Regarding McMillan, though, if you thought maybe he was a third-round pick, the Dolphins weren't picking in the third round until 97. So there's no guarantee that he would have lasted that long. If he's the guy that they wanted, which they said absolutely was the case, it appears to me that it would have been necessary to jump on him there.
So if Raekwon McMillan plays only on first and second downs and comes off the field, and maybe Lawrence Timmons comes off the field,
That's how you see it playing out with three linebackers, or?
Well, I think that Lawrence Timmons has always played inside linebacker, and I think he's going to play inside linebacker.
I think so too.
Now, Kiko Alonso and Raekwon McMillan are two guys that have played inside linebacker also, and that sort of flies against, like Mel Kiper was saying, the direction that we're headed in the NFL. You see teams like the Arizona Cardinals tonight adding safeties who they then use in sort of linebacker positions. But it's sort of a catch-22 for the Dolphins because they were so bad and they were so poor in the area of tackling against the run and short passes that Raekwon McMillan is the kind of guy who can really help the Dolphins stop a LaShawn McCoy, a healthy LaShawn McCoy, for example. We have to think about who even week one, Doug Martin, whoever. There's so many good running backs in the NFL that I'm okay with the idea that he might not be a three-down linebacker because you rarely have three linebackers out there all the time. This
was a move with McMillan where I feel like they need a linebacker right now for this upcoming season, but even if they didn't, you need one long term. Lawrence Timmons, like we said, is an experienced, aged player. He's here on a 2-year contract. There's no guarantee what you're going to have from him this year, even let alone beyond that. So you needed a linebacker, both I think for the immediacy, but even if you disagree with that, you can't argue against them needing one for the long term.
One of the things that Dolphin fans often say to me on Facebook and Twitter and on these chats is, we need starters for this year. Like, who's our third starting linebacker? Or who's?
I say that to you
Can Jermon Bushrod really be a starter this year? And I think that way sometimes. But the Dolphins don't look at it that way. Mike Tannenbaum, who oversees all this, he has a longer lens view. So, for example, when they draft Raekwon McMillan, it's because, as you pointed out, who is going to replace Lawrence Timmons in a year or two?
Right.
When they draft Cordray Tankersley, it's not, well, Tankersley's definitely going to start this year. We need to put him in there, even though the Dolphins did that with Xavier Howard last year. They created all this pressure and rushed him back at the start of the year because he was expected to start as a rookie.
It has a lot to do with Byron Maxwell.
The Tankersley edition is, we can cut Byron Maxwell after this year,
right,
which creates for an awkward situation. Right. Tankersley is going to get trained by a dude.
It's the same thing we talked about yesterday with Cam Wake and Charles Harris.
And that's the same reason.
It's been a long 2 days.
No, so Dolphin fans said, why do we need defensive ends? We have our starters.
Right.
Well, for one thing, Wake and Branch can't play every snap. It has to be a rotation of 3 or 4 guys, and Harris is your pass rush specialist, and the guy Hayes that they brought over from the Rams is more of your run specialist, so you may see him on earlier downs. What the Dolphins are trying to do here is build some depth, especially on defense, because when injuries came into play last year, you saw a lot of guys on the field who should not have been on the field on a playoff caliber defense.
One position, Joe, where I really felt like that was the case, where guys were on the field that shouldn't have been, was at safety.
Okay.
I felt like that was a huge. I mean, they have Bakari Rambo out there. I mean, I feel like that's a position they've got to address. However, that being said, so far 3 picks, 3 rounds. They took Charles Harris, defensive end. They took Raekwon McMillan, the linebacker. They took Cordray Tankersley. I think I pronounced all those right. The cornerback in the 3rd round. Those are their good picks. That's it. They don't have a 4th round pick. They've got 3 late 5th rounders. They've got a 7th rounder tomorrow. Their big picks were yesterday and today. So you have to evaluate the majority of their draft success, I think, on those 3 guys.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else is going to be digging for.
Now, keep in mind,
they're in the 5th round. They're digging for guys.
I can refute that a little bit, and this is another story that I can write tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Remind me the two stories. I've already forgotten the
It's
first
my
one.
job to remind you.
Durability and the 5th round in which the Dolphins picked up Jay Ajayi and Tony Lippett and a third guy who's pretty good, whose name I can't remember right now. Remember who's the if you guys remember, who was the 3rd, 5th rounder the year that they picked up Jay Ajayi and Tony Lippett? Because all three guys, maybe it was Bobby
Rashad
McCain.
Jones a 5th rounder back in the day,
not,
or
I think
6th
it
rounder?
might have even been Bobby McCain. So the idea is, remember the NFL draft when I was a kid, it was 12 rounds. So yeah, that's how old
That was
I
a
am.
long time ago.
Yeah, I know. So, there were even undrafted players now who somehow always turn into stars with like the Seahawks, Falcons, and Seahawks, Falcons, and who else always signs? Patriots.
The Patriots. But
Yeah.
those are exceptions, Joe. You're right that those have happened, but that's not the rule. The majority of the 5th, 6th round, 7th round picks.
But here's what I'm telling you: the Dolphins are going to draft a guard and/or center, maybe both, who they expect to make the roster in the 5th round tomorrow.
Okay.
And they're going to draft a defensive I was wrong about guard center. I said there was a 90% chance they would draft a guard or center tonight, and I was wrong.
You were wrong about something?
And I knew I was wrong when I was having dinner, and someone who works for the Dolphins said, defense, 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 which I should have listened to. So, yes.
I think I wrote that
Yeah.
the day before the draft. You might have.
Well, look, it was obvious that the
might
Dolphins
flip through those
it was-
articles every now and
It was
then.
obvious that the Dolphins needed to add a lot of defensive
Definitely,
players.
definitely. And it still
I
is.
would
They
have
still
liked
need
to
more.
have seen a guard center, but the Dolphins believe they can get a guard center in the 5th round to make the team, and a defensive tackle in the 5th round who can make the team. Somebody to challenge, let's say, for example, Julius Wormsley and Terrence Fede and Nick Williams, which remembering those three names at 12:10 in the morning is pretty good.
If you were to
Am I
go
missing anybody?
with just one position that they didn't address that you think
Guard
they should
center.
have, it would have been that?
Guard
Okay.
center. I know it's boring. I'm worried. The
I
last
think
time
I'd
I
say-
saw Mike Pouncey, he was on crutches. Jerron Bushrod is about to turn 33. And Ted Larson has not been a dominant player throughout his career.
He's a journeyman.
He's a journeyman. That's offensive to some, but
I don't find that offensive. You
Ted
think
La-
that's offensive?
Ted Larson declined to speak to media at a recent golf event. I wondered if
Was it because I referred to him as a journeyman?
I referred to him as average like 15 times.
Well,
in a
that's
column.
which is meaner out of
I think average.
Is it meaner to call a guy average or journeyman?
The Dolphins want average guard play. That's their goal.
That would have been
That's
a
their
plus
goal.
for them last year.
The
They
Dolphins
didn't have
want
that last
average guard play. Adam Gase is convinced they can get it from Jermon Bushrod, and we love Jermon Bushrod. He's a great person, so we hope that, in fact, his second year at right guard, if that's how it happens, is, in fact, average or perhaps even slightly above average.
Mine would have been maybe
What's
a safety or a tight end in the 3rd round. I'd have a hard time deciding. I say tight end because that's more fun to watch, but I think they really needed a safety.
Someone said journeyman is better, although there's sort of an understanding that when you are a journeyman, you are average.
Sure, yeah. I think both of what we're saying means the same thing, but journeyman's kind of nicer.
I
Journeyman does mean average, though. You're right, because if you were really good, you wouldn't be bouncing around journeying to all these teams, and if you were really bad, you wouldn't get the chance to keep going down to all these different teams. So they are synonyms, but journeyman sounds nicer.
There was a hockey player who got really mad at me once for a phrase that I used to describe him as he was a career minor leaguer. I called him a lifer.
A minor league lifer? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and he was so upset. And he was the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
But it was in the headline too. The worst thing is like when it's in the headline because they never forget the
You
headline.
got to tell the truth, though.
What was the position that you said you wanted?
Safety.
Hung up on safety, man. This T.J. McDonald's is going to be.
T.J. McDonald?
Let me tell you about safety.
You won't see T.J. McDonald until
T.J. McDonald's a good player.
Week 9.
Nate Allen is better than Makari
What are you-
Rambo. He is.
Does that also mean average? Is that another synonym for average?
Michael Thomas provides depth, and I'm actually looking forward to what Jordan Lucas and A.J. Hendy can do. You tell me I'm crazy, but A.J. Hendy might be a decent player.
Steve Georges writes in that Sue is a journeyman and Revis is a journeyman. Steve, you don't know what journeyman means. I'm sorry.
No, that
We're
is
glad to
definitely-
have you, but you got to look that one up.
All right, let's look ahead real quick to day 3.
I feel like we did that, but I was going to wrap it up right there.
Well, I wanted
But
to
go
wrap
ahead.
it up on
Go ahead. Go ahead.
a look ahead.
What
Now,
do you want to say about day 3?
the first 2 days are long. They're long days. And it's my understanding that
They're late.
Day 3
Day 3 is actually longer, but these ones are later.
Does it end at like 8 or 9 o'clock?
Yeah, I think it'll end at like 7 or 8 tomorrow. It'll be from like noon to 8.
That would be great. I used to sit on my couch and watch every pick. And, I mean, I'm talking like before it was my job, like for fun. Do you guys do that? Do you watch every pick?
This might make you laugh, but I became disenchanted with the NFL draft as a kid when I was watching it to see, this is in the 90s, where Danny Werfel got picked, because Danny Werfel was amazing, and Danny Werfel didn't get picked till like 99th or something like that, and I just didn't, as a kid, I didn't understand that.
Zach Thomas is a 5th-round pick. That's a good point.
There you go.
Guys who are just...
You weren't listening at all,
Guys
were you?
who were just... Yeah, Danny Werfel, disenfranchised.
Franchise.
Yeah, you were frustrated. You were upset. Tim Tebow was a first rounder.
Do your day 3 look ahead that you want to do so badly. Gather around, kids. Here it comes.
We're really tired.
If your children are asleep, wake them up for this. This is going to be great.
It's Friday.
Go ahead.
It's
day 3 look ahead.
It's
Joe.
Friday night, and there are a lot of people that actually tune in to watch us, and we really appreciate it.
We do.
And we have a long ride home. Who has a longer ride home? I got 40 minutes.
I got less than that. But it's going to feel longer. Your day 3 look ahead that you want to do.
Can we show up late tomorrow because the Dolphins don't have a 4th round
pick? What if they trade up, man?
Who are they going to get?
I feel like you're stalling because you don't have a day 3 look ahead.
Well,
you kind of pitched that with nothing to say.
The Dolphins have. Here's what I want. This will be the last thing I say, and then you could say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, that'll be the last thing.
Here's what I want. I want a guard center, a defensive tackle.
Okay.
And after that, I really don't care.
All right.
I just want a
really
guard.
Kind of fizzled there at the end
guard
of that day 3 look
and
ahead.
A center.
I want this. I want this.
No, I want a guard and a center and a defensive tackle.
Okay.
What are your 3?
I want you to bring just a little more energy next time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I want a safety and a tight end, Joe. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow at some point. They've got, like we said, 3 picks late in the 5th and 1 in the 7th. I'm not sure exactly when we'll be getting to you guys, but we will definitely do at least one of these
Read
tomorrow.
the Daily Dolphin. I wrote about how angry I am they didn't pick a center.
Good. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you
guard.
got that off your chest. Thanks, guys.